Hello and welcome to Kerbal Space Program episode 6 with me, Proximace. Now today we're going to edit the pod launch design that you can see here to try and change the middle sections for some of the extra resources we need, such as fuel and RCS gas. So let's get started. Okay, so here we have the RCS fuel pod version. It's exactly the same rocket as the habitation one, but it's just got RCS tanks. Now you may notice there's an extra detachment thing here. It's just because for some reason I couldn't get these tanks to sit right up against the bottom of this. I'm not sure why, but I'm just going to move this onto an extra thing and then just make sure to never hit space once I get right up there. And I'm going to use the game's quick save feature. Hit F5, quick save. So the idea is that I get close to it, I quick save. If I smash into it and blow everything up, I'm just going to reload the quick save and not blow it up. I may put some of those in if they explode in a funny way, but I might just cut a load of them out and just show you the final entry like I did it perfect. And in case you're wondering, I did do that first one first time. Okay, so let's get this launch underway. So again, we're going to use the Ascent autopilot to enable us to join up with the HMR Sparkle. And let's get that going. Now, I have installed another couple of mods since last time, one of which is the Better Aerodynamics mod, which I have hidden down here, which gives you information on things like whether you're going to stall or so on, which is kind of more useful with space planes, but also changes all the aerodynamics of the parts. So it's actually going to be harder to get these rockets into space. They have to actually look properly like rockets, which is, yeah, it's annoying, but yeah, it's not something I can live without. And also, I've installed the Kethane series of mods. Basically it mods a load of parts but also mods the actual resource into the game. Basically what Kethane is it's a gas that's found on planets. I mean, the nearest source is the moon. You have to send a probe up or any kind of ship up with a scanner on to find out where those deposits are, and then you can send miners up to go and harvest it. And what you can do with that is actually change it into liquid fuel, into oxidizer, into RCS monopropellant, and into xenon gas. So basically you can get fuel without having to launch it from Kerbin, which is very beneficial because there you can see that the aerodynamics working because you're getting re-entry effects just because I'm going so fast and low in the atmosphere. That doesn't normally happen. That's because of the mod I've installed. So what I'm going to do in kind of addition to adding on these pods to the Sparkle is we're going to whiz through these quite quickly because they're both exactly the same. They'll launch exactly the same. There's not a huge amount interesting going on there. I'll just fast forward through. Again, if there's any fun collisions, I might show those as well, but mainly I'll then get on to designing and building a little probe to go and launch around the moon to go and scan stuff, and then a miner which we can then land on the moon once we found out where the good deposits are, so that we can kind of, the grand scheme is to have a miner on the surface, a shuttle to take the fuel from the surface of the moon up to orbit around the moon where there'll be some kind of fuel depot, and then we can tug it over to the Sparkle. So that prevents us from having to waste a huge amount of time getting it from Kerbin, and also it means that we come across any other deposits on other planets when we're around the solar system. We don't have to worry about we've run out of fuel for the lander, we have to get it all the way out there from Kerbin. We can probably just that span off quite rapidly there. Oh, let's watch that again in slow motion. Okay, so I'm just going to speed up through this part, and then once this is docked, go pick up the next bit and then launch that. In the same way, I'll speed through that as well, just so we can get it docked, and then I'll talk through some of the extra bits that the Kethane mod requires us to actually produce. So let's fast forward. And here, one of the other mods I have installed, the haystack, because the orbit's starting to get a bit clustered up with all this debris. It's hard to keep on clicking on the Sparkle to set its target, so this gives you the option to filter through all of the different things, debris or vessels, and you can actually turn off some of these, if you don't want to search for them, so that you can actually select the one you want. So obviously you want the HMR Sparkle, and then we want to click that to set it as our target. And there we go, isn't that cool? Right, now let's try and get an encounter. As close as I feared we might be. So let's just back our way out of here a bit. Okay, and now let's detach these fuels. And now don't touch space ever again. So I've also installed another mod which gives me, a docking camera. Right, now let's try and get ourselves aligned with this again. There we go, that's better. Right, let's get this crosshair on that docking port now. That's good. So this gives us an indication of what to head for. As long as we point towards this, we'll be in good condition, I think. Kind of. Yeah, there we go. Another successful docking. This must be some kind of miracle happening here. So before we go down and do the creation of the Kethane mining equipment, what I'm going to do is I'm quickly going to switch all of these guys over into these habitation modules, so they just have a little bit more space to roam around. Yeah, they can check the TV, post on Twitter, whatever astronauts do in space, really. So let's just quickly get them bunched over there. so now we've got all of the Kerbals from that RCS ship into this ship. So it's basically going to do exactly the same launch to bring up the battery and Xenon pod for that one. Okay, so here's the battery and Xenon blocks there. So again, it's going to be exactly the same launch, so I'm just going to speed through all the way through it. There's no point in watching it again because it's exactly the same, so just some nice relaxing music and speed right through it. And fortunately I didn't have to cut anything out for that last docking because I managed to do it again. So I think because I put the arms to help me dock, I've magically been able to dock. It's like putting your sunglasses on and then the sun disappearing behind a cloud. So let's get this rendezvoused with the Sparkle. Actually, what altitude is the Sparkle at? Let's just have a look. 330. That's fine, let's get that one to 330 then. There we go. Right, so we have now, again, just going to quickly transfer these Kerbals over. I'll just turn off the docking camera there. But it's started to get quite crowded up here, so on this last remaining port here, what we're going to do is we're going to have the dock and then a straight section coming up here, and then with ports on all sides, because we're going to need more than one lander, and we're going to need some additional things like Kethane mining and so forth, which may have to come on another ship because this one's getting very crowded. So to start with, we'll ferry these ones across from here to the Havicans, and then we'll go and build the Kethane probe and miner, and then we'll probably launch the probe this episode and then leave the miner until the start of the next episode. So let's get these guys over. Right, so both of these modules are actually full now, so we are just going to have to keep this guy back where he was, which is a shame, but I'm sure he'll get used to solitary confinement. That's why we didn't have RCS turned on, because of wobble issues. But there we go, we have those 3 resource cans on, which is a really good achievement for me. They're all filled to the bursting with Kerbals, Xenon and RCS, because that's all we need, because we've got this ion drive engine at the bottom here. So let's return to the Space Center. So we're going to be making a probe, so let's get this one, get rid of that down the bottom there. Right, so the things we will need will be the standard basic things. Some of the mod pack, I can't remember which mod pack this was, but came with these smaller batteries, which is really quite nice for that, and these larger Xenon tanks, but we're just having a conventional fueled engine for this probe with these fuel tanks here, and rather than using that tiny ant engine, there's this one, which I think is a bit more efficient. Let's check. So get 20 with 350 ISP for 0.9 and 1.1. So yeah, there's more power in that other one, but obviously it's going to use more fuel. I think actually that will probably be enough because it's not a massive probe, so we're going to use fuel tanks to get it most of the way. Right, so now Kethane things. Survey unit. Looks quite cool. There is a larger one, so you can put on one with larger craft, but that's not going to fit on there because it's bigger than the whole satellite body. So let's just plonk that one on the top like that. That's obviously going to need to be powered, so we'll get... It needs quite a lot of power, so we're going to get 2 of the giant solar panels. It's got batteries, it's got thrust, so that's all we need for that bit. So now, well, we'll put that there. We'll just look at some of the other things that the Kethane pack gives. Get these converter units. So what this will do is once you've collected Kethane in some of these tanks, such as that one there, by mining it with these, kind of extend a big drill down, they'll store Kethane in this tank, and then you use this and you can convert it into any of the resources you need, so it'll be liquid fuel, oxidizer, xenon and RCS. And these things come in a variety of sizes. You get these massive ones, so if you want to have a huge amount of Kethane stored, or these small ones which strap onto the side of things. And then there's this turbine thing, which is some kind of thrust engine but that burns Kethane. I'm not really sure exactly how to use that. I've never actually used it. It might be fun to kind of try out, but I'm not going to use it right now. But those are the things that the Kethane mod adds in, which is quite cool because it allows you to again get fuel without having to bring it up from the planet's surface, which is kind of what scientists are looking to do now with the fuel sources on the moon for a moon base or an interstellar trip to Mars maybe, or sending further out, just because it takes so much effort to get anything off of the ground from Earth that the moon has much weaker gravity, so if you can generate the fuel there it's much more efficient. So this is the Kethane probe, and let's get this build onto the top of some kind of rocket. So here's what I've got so far. You can see the probe at the top here and some rocket underneath. Right, so what we're going to look at is this one up here, the action group. So what you can do with this is go over to custom 1 and I'm going to let's click on these solar panels and then toggle panels. So basically what will happen now is when I press 1 it will toggle the panels, so obviously if they're closed they'll open, if they're open they'll close, so that's pretty good. And then custom 2 I'm going to activate the detector with. So what you can do is if you've got a lander, or when we go to the Kethane miner that will be more important, but for this it kind of mainly will go through with the staging, just tapping spacebar, so that's not too much of a problem. Right, so let's go back to the parts. I think I'm just going to add a couple more of these on just here to just help that stay a little bit more structurally sound. And let's launch this into orbit around the moon. Okay, so here we are on the launch pad. Now you might notice a slight difference in sound quality. That's because for some reason my headset microphone has stopped working, so I've had to switch over to the one on my webcam, which is considerably lower quality. So we'll make do with what we've got. So let's point this straight up and let's get going in 3, 2, 1, engage. I should probably try and time my launches so that the day, so you can kind of see what's going on a bit better. It's not too bad, but it's just a little bit dim. And I keep on forgetting to put lights on things, which is, well, to be fair, there's not really room on this one for lights, but anyway. Let's fire this into space. Yeah, you can see the just the air effects going around on this one. Again, that's the improved aerodynamics mod at work. Ooh, and then that, because we're going quite fast. We're almost going a kilometre a second. Okay, so this is going to be our first voyage to the moon for this save. On other saves I've got, you can't really see the moon for lots of debris going around it, so it makes selecting it a little bit harder, but it's not too much of a problem on here. So we're just basically to try and make a nice circular orbit. Actually, why am I bothering to do this? We'll just get MechJeb to do it for me, because I'm lazy. Okay, right now we're in a nice circular orbit. Let's burn for moon intercept. There we go, transfer point to the moon. And we've still got quite a lot of fuel. We've even got this nuclear engine before we get to the actual probe itself, because we want to try and get it into orbit around the moon without having to use this, because we want a slightly different orbit than we would normally want for this. Oop. We're also running into the problem. I should probably have put the solar panels out by now, because we're running out of, well, running low on power. But basically we want a polar orbit rather than the standard equatorial orbit. There we go, so I hit 1, so you can see those panels coming out now. They'll come into effect when we eventually get around to the side where there is some sunlight. Let's turn off the RCS, otherwise they're going to use all of it. And it's got these thrust vectoring engines, so that'll be fine for keeping itself straight on those. The nuclear engine should be alright as well. But yes, we're on to polar orbit, so basically what that means is that as we time-lapse it, it will scan the entire surface of the moon, because it'll stay kind of in space, orbiting kind of in the same axis, but obviously as the moon goes around Kerbin, it'll have the effect of it basically rotating slowly around Kerbin in that polar orbit, if you see what I mean. So basically we'll get a nice scan of the entire surface. Well, that's not too bad of an orbit. We'll probably straighten it up once we get there a bit better. Look at that tiny little ant engine go, just bringing us into the last little bits of this orbit. Let's check it out. Yep, so nice low orbit, and just to show that it is a polar orbit. So now what we're going to do is, the solar panels are already open, so let's turn on Kethane detector, and you can hear the bonging. Alright, the problem here is that that's from a different save, so that's gonna be a problem. But yeah, so I think you'll get the idea there. Let's just turn off, that sounds annoying. So basically what you do is you warp it so that it goes round, so scan down and then come up the other side, then down and up the other side, down and up the other side, and so on. And then you'll get a nice map of where all the Kethane deposits are. So you can see it's now coming down just a sliver to the left of where it was before, and there you go, so that's still a Kethane deposit there. So maybe that the moon has just set Kethane deposits, it's not randomized, but yeah, let's just see if it catches this. Yeah, it looks like it's not randomized. Oh well. But yeah, so you can see there's a big deposit up here, and there's likely to still be deposits at all of these places. So what we'll do is just leave that running, because obviously when we're time warping for other stuff, that will get done. So let's go, and we want to pick out this Kethane probe. Kethane probe. Fly that. Right, we've not got a lot of electricity on this one, so let's just point it at the retrograde orbit and fire the engine full to try and deorbit this into the moon, to try and keep the moon as uncluttered as possible. And there you go, so yeah, that's now going to crash into the moon, so we don't have to worry about that one anymore. So now we go to the Space Center and plan out the start of our Kethane landing mining base. So I'm going to have a reasonable size one. I'm going to put a Kethane detector on the top of it, just so that we can keep track using that of how much Kethane is still under that particular deposit. And then we're going to need, it's based on a model of mine from the other save game I play on, just because I know it works, so you need docking ports obviously to be able to exchange fuel using this fuel balancing block here. So I'm going to plop that down right here next to the crew quarters, and I am going to map that to this action group. There you go, 9. And then action 1 is going to be these drills, so we'll toggle those. 2 will be the landers, so toggle those, and that leaves us 3 for, that's floating, I don't like that, but that leaves us 3 for solar panels or whatever, so that's fine. Where should I just put this just down there? It just needs to be on, we don't need to be able to see it or access it. Docking ports, but I'm not going to use symmetry because I want to give us the option to have some at different heights here. So let's raise that up a bit, and then a bit more, and then finally a bit more, just in case whatever we roll along to attach to these is a slightly different height. Splurging out, come on. Oh, line up nicely. Oh, that one is centralized, this one is not. Right, so that should give us enough to run these lights. Haha. So we'll have some looking down so we know where the ground is when we're coming in to land, which is amazingly useful. And then we'll also have some pointing, so we can have them pointing inwards. Like that. We'll move these off here, let's put them on the side like that. Okay, so this is the Kethane miner. Sure, why not? We'll leave the capitalization just like that. It seems perfectly sensible. So let's toggle those panels so we can get the drills, we can do the legs, we can do the panels, we can do the fuel balancing, lights we can switch on by themselves, and 4 can be to toggle that detector off and on. Yep, that looks fine. So now I'm just going to attach that to the top of our rocket, and then I'll finish today's episode with that, and then next week's episode can be launching this, whatever it turns out to be. So let's get building. Oh, again, I'm using these quad stacks are not standard parts, and neither is this large atomic motor and this Atlas engine. I just give a little bit of variation, so you can have, rather than having the narrow nuclear engine, you can have these slightly larger ones, so you can use larger fuel tanks. The problem with this one that I found is that it's really good, but it does, even in space, does overheat to failure at 100% thrust, and because it's not a standard part, MechJeb doesn't actually know this, so you can't really use him to kind of operate it if it's going to be a maneuver that's going to require it to be on full thrust, because he will just run it until it explodes and you can't stop it without cancelling the maneuver, which is a little bit annoying really, but it's not too much of a problem, and I don't tend to use MechJeb all that very much. And we're going to use it for landing because it's going to be, nice to be accurate, so we land on top of the Kethane kind of reserves under the moon's surface, because this doesn't have any wheels to get around. Okay, so that's what we're going to work with. So that's all for this episode of Kerbal Space Project, and next week we will launch this and try and locate it down on top of the Kethane reserve so we can start getting that mined. Yeah, we might just quickly land on Minmus. Again, it's not that difficult to get to. It's only a couple extra meters per second than the moon, so we might just quickly build a lander for there, because that's quite a fun little moon, which on one of my save files had a glitch, which the surface was kind of torn in one area, i.e. you could see space through it, and I ran a Kerbal into it and he instantaneously exploded like it was hitting the ground at ridiculous speeds. So yeah, that was a little bit glitchy, but this is, I think I accidentally called it a beta a couple of episodes ago. This is an alpha still, so lots of bugs to be worked out, and frame rate issues when you start getting ridiculously complicated space stations in orbit and so on, even on pretty powerful computers like mine. Okay, thank you for watching. I've been Proximace, and I'll see you all next time.